and welcome to the 3T RPG podcast. My name is Forgotten Moon, but obviously my birth name is Harrison Hunt, and with me is Satanic Countess, also known as Nick Lamley, and of course we've got Bestial Ritual, who you know as James Clark. Say hi, guys.
Hi.
Bestial Ritual.
I put these guys' names through a black metal name generator. But this is a show all about tabletop RPGs, and we've got all our usual RPG segments such as feedback, news punch, what you've been slaying, and your electro letters. But for this week's main subject, we're going to go for something a bit different.
Yes.
Yes. We're going to go.
Yes.
We're going RPG. Yes. We're going RPG. Well, we've got it out of our system. We're going to go RPG adjacent this week by jumping into the strange world of Dungeon Synth. So hold on to your cloaks, ladies and gentlemen, because it's going to be a wild ride.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Should we do some speed back?
Oh, yes. Please do.
Jay Coppers, he feeds our back, and he says, I enjoyed the last couple of shows, especially the history of Hackmaster, which, though I have been aware of on the periphery of my RPG knowledge for years, never looked up close or in detail on. Meanwhile, your take on Western Gunfight was a nice delve into the early days of the evolution of RPGs from their wargaming roots. Perhaps you gents shall become RPG archaeologists and go on globe-trotting adventures, punching neo-Nazis in the face as you quest to uncover more secrets of RPG history.
Oh, my God.
Please.
Also, many congratulations to the Hunt family on the pending child. Harrison, I recommend you take a level in the dad character class. Finally, read in best cheesy Alan Rickman voice you can muster. There can never be enough Alan Rickman bits, for from beyond the grave or otherwise, he has the best nonplussed tone of apathy for any situation. Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
I want to be an RPG archaeologist so bad now.
Because we can make those, you know, those like sort of documentary type YouTube series that have happened recently where they'll have some dumb quest and then they'll sort of document getting there, buying a ticket. I saw one the other day of a guy, this guy called Nick Robinson, actually makes really great videos where he tries to attend a coin convention without touching a single coin.
Oh, my God. Did he succeed, or is that a spoiler?
Well, I won't spoil it, but it is actually quite funny because he was trying to replicate, you know, people do like no coin runs of Super Mario in real life, not in real life, on the video games, and so he was trying to do that in real life. But yeah, and I would love to do something like that with an RPG, like maybe we go on a big journey to get the first ever copy of Western Gunfight or something.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Fucking great.
Yeah.
Or maybe we should just rip off that guy's idea and attend an RPG convention, but try to not engage in a single conversation about RPGs.
That would be fucking... Just talk about deadly, that would.
Let's talk about marbles.
Somebody comes up to you and you'd just be like, so marbles, eh?
Yeah, what a sport.
Yes, I love marbles. I love the way they
There'll be so
shine.
many jokes. I think you're in the wrong convention.
No, mate. I think you're in the wrong convection. What convection?
Convections.
So obviously, like, recently we've been talking about nicking stuff from pubs and from Starbucks and Chinese restaurants and all of this. Daniel Irwin, he's graced us with another email about his theft.
His escapades.
He says, well, since you asked, we did once steal a chair from a pub, although only because my mate Oddjob had sat on it and broke.
Right.
And had sat on it and it broke. The bar staff hadn't noticed, so we had to break the rest up and sneak it out in pieces like something from The Great Escape. Oddjob was not pleased.
Oh, dear.
Oh, no. So they just got rid of the evidence. They didn't actually thieve it to keep it.
They were like, round the corner in a pub, quick, let's smash this chair up. They can't know. Here, put this leg down your trouser leg. I mean, it's also like peak tough guy's Britishness here because he's got a mate called Oddjob. It's always like...
Yeah, I love that.
It's always like, is Barry coming? Barry the nonce, his finger's coming. What about Chinese Alan?
What about Sydney?
Odd Job's fucking cunted a chair off. Quick, smash it up.
Get out of it. Get rid of the evidence.
Well, in Great Escape, for those that haven't seen it, they're digging a tunnel, and what they do is they put the bits of gravel from the tunnel to escape from this prisoner of war camp in their pockets and sort of scatter it around the yard, kind of thing.
Yep, that's
every day. So if he's saying he did this Great Escape style, so they obviously smashed up the chair and then went out through a tunnel.
I hope so.
Pub landlord comes in. He's like, what the fuck is this hole doing there?
Where's that chair gone?
Yeah. Where's that chair? There's bits of wood all in the car park. What the fuck is going on?
What are they selling matches out the back?
And then suddenly Daniel Irwin and Odd Job go over the fucking fence on a motorbike.
Laughing with a pint in their hand.
People that have seen Great Escape would have found that very funny, just to let you know. All right. That is it for feedback this time. Send in more theft emails and any feedback you have to 3trpgpod@gmail.com or on the Facey B. Should we do some news?
News lunch.
Please. It's been a really slow news week, right? I mean, really slow. I don't know what. Look, for Christ's sake, like something happened out there, all right? Because this is probably the worst news story we've ever had. WizKids announces. Oh no! Announce How dare you?
You're so announces.
I'm so tired, man. Okay, WizKids announces largest Tiamat miniature ever.
Oh.
I know. All right, just carry on listening, please, listeners.
Kill me.
I know it's a bad one. So, Tiamat, I can't even bring myself to get enthused about this, but basically, this is a three-headed dragon, okay? And it's the main characters in the D&D cartoon famously fight it in the first episode, which is hilarious. But, so WizKids, they do the D&D official miniatures, and they're making a big mini. That is basically the story. It's a foot high and priced. Now, this is the bit that I sort of thought was maybe worth discussing a little bit, because all they've put on their website is it's priced under $400. Right?
$399.99.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And you know what? That's too much.
Is
Isn't
it
it
under $400? Is the word under $400 meant to be a good thing when you're talking about minis?
I could buy a PlayStation 5 for that amount of money.
That's what I
The thing
mean.
is, That's not a mini at that size. It's a biggie.
It's a massive E.
It's a hugie.
Yeah, it is. You can imagine the salesman trying to pitch it, and he's like, "Look, mate, look." But what you got to remember is it's under $400.
Yeah, but it's $399.99. No, it's no. That's where you're wrong. That's under $400, and you get a lot of bang for your buck.
Would you like to get accidental damage cover for this?
So I've just typed in three-headed dragon into Google and gone to the shopping, right? And you can get a toy dragon that's of comparable size with three heads for £23.
Wow.
So, you know, just don't bother. When this comes out, if you're spending 400 quid on that, you have got more money than sense.
Yeah.
And give me some. Give us some.
Give us some money.
So we can be RPG archaeologists. That's all we want to be.
Yeah. That's
I just need one of them little brushes. So when I'm digging stuff up, I can brush the dust off it. They're about $400 for a good one. Anyway, if you want horsehair.
Well,
under
just
300,
under.
under 400. Under 400.
So, yeah, that is it for news. Sorry, everyone. I might cut all of that. But
Please,
all right,
please
let's get into what you slaying, shall we, and talk about what we've been playing.
Yeah.
So, obviously our Tough Guys campaign has been continuing. The last time we left this... this, basically, for those that don't know, is a British gangster setting for Savage Worlds. And, where last we left off, the guys were tasked with planning a stag do for their boss, who is the leader of a gang called the Holloway Firm. Because he was getting married, and the next session, what we did is we played through the wedding. But unbeknownst to the gangsters and the players, their chip shop from which they sell drugs had been smashed up, their drugs taken, and so at the same time where two of the players had to attend the wedding, two of the other players went after the guy that had stolen their drugs, hoping to get it and still attend the wedding. Because here's the thing.
it says in the Wise Guys rule book that with these gangsters, if the boss tells you to be somewhere, it doesn't matter if your wife is giving birth, if you're in the operating theatre getting open heart surgery, you've got to be where the boss tells you. So, yeah, Nick, your character, who's a area boss called Mickey Jackpot Duggar, he went to the wedding, taking James, your character Sydney, with him. And I mean, the thing is that it went pretty okay. I mean, we can keep this kind of brief, but the only real big thing that happened was obviously you two went and got suits and got a limo, but you realised that kind of a wedding is a prime location to be jumped by other gangs. So obviously you needed to get Sydney a weapon, but you didn't want to stop for too long. So wedding was in Richmond Park. And how did you go about getting a weapon? Tell me about that.
Well, as we was cruising through Richmond Park in our limo, we spied a lovely little game of cricket going on. So, you know, what other gangster would, you know, what else would you do? You get out your car and go and have a chat with the batsman and pinch his bat.
And the funny thing is
that was the plan,
right,
anyway.
Is that Nick he's a darts player, and he's got the darts player edge, which allows you basically to ignore 2 points of multi-action penalty. So essentially what it means is you can chuck 2 darts per attack. The funny thing is that when you went to go and steal this guy's bat, Nick was very clear. He's like, I'm chucking it at his foot. You know, I'm not going mental here. I'm throwing it at his foot. But he throws a couple of darts. They hit the cricket player in the foot. And then he dies from the wounds because it exploded over and over again. AC got such high damage.
When it hit a severe artery.
Oh my god!
Yeah, exactly.
Carotid
and he hit
artery.
a severe artery. But the funny thing about that is that while I was writing the Tough Guys book, and Nick, you basically came up with all the weapons for the book. I was like, I really want darts to be strength plus D4, and Eric, who wrote Wise Guys, was like, fucking shurikens are strength plus 2, right? So, I mean, that's ridiculous. And I was adamant. I was like, no, it would be more fun if they're strength plus D4. And they are. And it has resulted in quite a few accidental killings. So maybe I was wrong about that. But I still think it's quite fun just to keep it away. Because the amount of times Mickey's like, I'm just going to disable him. I'm not going to kill him. Oh dear. Oh, whoops, he's dead.
But then on the other side of that, it's just like I'm just going to try and throw a dart at that emergency exit button, or I'm just going to sling one little dart at this switch.
Yeah.
Good.
It's like he uses darts to do everything.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I mean, so what? In the end, they had to pay off the limo guy to store the body in their car till the end of the wedding. James, your character Sydney, got rid of the body while the wedding was going on. Nick,
well, he's in our employ now. The limo. I think the limo guy had seen so much that in the end we had to make him an offer he couldn't refuse, really, because buy him on, exactly, because there was shut up money, but I think he was in too deep.
There's shut up money, and there's this guy's seen way too much. If he has a flashback in a pub and everyone finds out, I mean, and essentially, long story short, we did a dramatic task where Nick's character, basically a 5-round skill challenge to do a best man speech, and it went really well.
It's awesome.
And I thought was kind of funny about the way that we did it was that I kind of just said, instead of doing the whole speech on what you're saying each round, we'll just cut into like the end of a punchline, and I'll be like, okay, what did you get? Okay, you got a roll with 2 raises, so what's the punchline here? And he's like, and then he filled it full of gravel and fucked off, and the whole party's like cracking up.
Man, that was fun.
It was good. So they did get jumped to the wedding. The Forest Gate Gang, who are basically their main rivals at the moment, they kind of intercepted the wedding, killed all the waiters, and replaced them, and put a bomb in the wedding cake.
Yep.
So just as these guys' boss was about to cut the cake, Nick notices a wire, throws a dart to hit the knife out of his boss's hand, and then Sydney, James, your character Sydney, jumped forward with his knife, with the cricket bat, trying to attack the Forest Gate Gang. But Nick just ended the fight in one fell swoop by picking up the cake and lobbing it like a throw-in at a football game.
Fucking so good.
And like some guests were dead, but that's just collateral damage. I mean, the Forest Gate Gang got obliterated. Just that image of somebody throwing a cake like that is just amazing. The great thing about all of this, though, is at the same time, basically the two muscles of the group, so there's a South African mercenary called Payne and a hooligan called Mo Exotic, they'd gone to track down the coke and track down this guy, apparently this guy that looked like a Viking that stole their coke, went to track him down in Brighton and go to his restaurant, and they took this, well, basically borrowed a sandwich van that was shaped like a sandwich and went to go and get it, and basically the Viking had set up this little video player that said, you know, a shipment of PlayStation 1s is coming into town, is going into London via the M25, and we want those delivered to us in the old warehouse by 3 o'clock. So cue probably one of the longest chase scenes that's ever happened, but it was so exciting, where these guys were chasing an Argos van full of PlayStations down the motorway, trying to knock it off and steal the PlayStations to get their coke back, and also, you know, James's character's nan had been kidnapped. So, you know, they're flinging it down the motorway, then the police get involved, and one of the guys is in the back throwing large tubs of Happy Shopper mayonnaise at the police, while the other one's trying to ram the Argos van off the road.
Yep.
It was fucking insane.
It was.
I mean,
Not only that, but the car was shaped like a sandwich.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So it made everything just that little bit more ridiculous.
Yeah.
But you know why the car was shaped like a sandwich was because one of these guys' employees, this guy called Keegan, he owns a business where he goes around in a van and he sells sandwiches, right? And there was just a point where he was like, you know, you guys couldn't borrow my van. And James, you just went, bruv, that van's shaped like a sandwich. And I was just like, okay, that's canon. What was great as well is, like, at one point they were trying to catch up to the Argos van, and the Argos van was actually trying to make the flee maneuver. At the time, they knew that they really only had a couple of rounds before that they could actually catch up with this fucking van. So in the end, like, at one point, Mo Exotic, the hooligan, he was just jetsoning sandwich equipment out the back to speed the fucking sandwich up. It worked out in the end. They got the PlayStations, but unfortunately, when they brought them to the old warehouse, the police had followed them there, ending up in one of the characters being arrested, one of them getting away, and then coming back later to fight the Viking. But unfortunately, the PlayStations were gone. Sydney's nan was still kidnapped, and all of this shit. And the very last thing that happened, really, was that they had discovered that Sydney's nan's place had been set up with bombs, and when they went to go and recover her from being kidnapped, she was blown to smithereens along with her flat, and now they're seeking out the Forest Gate Gang leader to get revenge. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
But they got their coat back, they're getting the chippy fixed up. You guys have started a brothel in Dunsford, which is pretty cool.
We've started work on renovating it first with the help of Giovanni Tagliatelle.
Right, and just for anyone listening that thinks that I'm racist because I put Giovanni Tagliatelle in my game, there's a rule in Wise Guys where you can use a Benny to use a criminal underworld contact, and Nick wanted a cheap cowboy builder. And the thing is, the players get to make up the details about him. And I'm like, okay, you want an Italian builder, what's his name? And you're like, Giovanni, and then somebody went Tagliatelle. And it's like, it's like so... It's
Wasn't
so bad,
me.
it's
I
like,
went with the cool name. I was like, we got to have an Italian dude, you know, he's got style, it's going to be like, you know, we want it done up well, and it's like an interior designer for the mob.
yeah, exactly. You wanted it to look classy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because it was like, and it's like, imagine if you went like, I don't know, we want an Indian contact, and he's called Ramesh Curry. It's like, it's so bad. I know, and I was just like, you know what, but fuck it. And it was also, they found out the new driver that they got at the wedding, his name was also Sydney, the same as James's character. So Nick was like, oh, no, we can't have that. We got to give you a nickname or something. And the guy's coming up with all sorts of cool names. He's like, what about Slazenger? What about Max Power? And he's like, I think we'll call you Kirk. And he's like, Kirk, I like that. Smudgely. What does it always have to be something weird at the end? So now he goes by the name of Kirk Smudgely.
Yep.
Probably end up calling him Smudge.
You're so good at strange character names, Nick. It's like the amount that you're belting out, you're like, what about Rob Blobson? What about...
It's just stupid. I love words. I just love stupid words.
Yeah, same here. It's like... So yeah, that's where we've left it. So we've got a brothel business being built up. You're getting the chip shop renovated. You've got your product back, and yeah, Sydney's nan is
Oh,
unfortunately
don't forget
dead.
the last bit. Yeah, we're about to storm the Brixton Academy.
In Wise Guys, you kind of each character has to have a redeeming characteristic. That's kind of a setting rule, and so it also anchors the players kind of to the real world as well. So when their families sort of get involved, and James, your character, his thing was that he's really nice to his nan, he looks after her, things like this.
So he's
gone been killed. So
he's gone batshit crazy. He had a really depressive moment that actually the guys at the table as players just went, "Oh, it's actually a bit depressing." So he had to sort of skip forwards because I got really into it.
I called for a break because I was just like, we're actually getting actually sad here because this is bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the leader of the Forest Gate gang is in the Tough Guys book. It's Queen Sovereign for copyright reasons, but it's Lady Sovereign, who's a real life rapper that existed in the 90s. She's 16 years old, and she's the leader via money and knowing the right people, things like this. So yeah, they sort of stormed Brixton Academy where she's playing a gig that night, and they're gonna beat her up. And where we left the last game, we got Sydney. You stormed the stage. Another character, one of you's in a box, one's in a box on the opposite side, one stormed the stage, and they're all tooled up, and they've got weapons coming out the wazoo, and
Someone's
they're
got
going
a
to fucking
toilet.
try and...
Someone's got a toilet stuck on their foot.
That was embarrassing. I mean, the problem is that one of the characters he wanted to get a security guard's uniform so he could get unprecedented access to the backstage and stuff, right? So he waited till a security guard went to the loo, followed him in, and then he was going to stand on the toilet in his booth and just come smashing down on the guy on the other side, like hit him with the cistern lid or something. The unfortunate thing is he was getting up on the loo, and then he said, right, and I'm just going to pull myself up gently and look over to see if he's in a good attackment position. And obviously I go, okay, roll strength just to pull yourself up.
Yeah.
He gets a crit fail, and I'm like, okay, your foot goes through the toilet. And the guy in the other cubicle, the security guard's laughing at him. Nick's character comes in and is like, how'd you get your fucking foot stuck in a U-bend? And Mozart's like, just shut up, you cunt, just get me out. Do you know what it reminded me of? Have you seen that video of the builder who was obviously riding in the back with all the paint?
Oh no!
He's like riding in the back of a van with all the paint, and they can hear him raging. They open the door. He's covered from head to toe in white paint, and he's trying. He can't move because he keeps sliding along in all this paint. His mates are like really taking the piss out of him. They're like, "What have you done? This paint everywhere." And he's like, "Shut up, you cunt!"
What are you doing, John? What the handbrakes? Look at the fingerprints up there. What are you fucking gagging at, cunt?
There you go.
Oh, that's so funny. Man covered in paint, back of van, explicit. I'll just, you know what?
That picture needs to go in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll do, I might just set the episode as that picture, just to fucking freak people out.
So I'm just looking at it.
That's hurt me. Oh dear. Have you seen the Goonies? He looks a bit like that guy.
He actually does, yeah. Like, because he's got only one half of his face covered in paint.
Mate, absolute hyenas laughing at him as well.
I feel quite bad for him. But you know, at the end, they close the door now again. Just leave him in there.
I would as well. There's
hear
no
him-
fixing that mess.
you can hear
is
him
there?
rage. Right, shut up. We'll put
Right.
that. I'll put that in as a jingle here
Sorry.
and just cut this bit
Yeah.
out.
You need to
That's
put
all right.
the bit of the jingle is, it's gone all over my fucking fishing gear, mate.
Oh yeah, it's classic. So that is it for what we've been slaying this week. Shall we do the Spain suspect, the main subject?
The Spain suspect.
Spain suspect.
So whenever you're playing a game with, let's face it, awkward nerds, there could often be a pause in the action where a player thinks about his character's next move, and rather than sit in the thick atmosphere of an awkward, autistic pause, you instead decide to bathe in the rich textures of some good tunes. I'm trying to get a job on Radio 4 here, by the way. Our choice for game night music has often been the dungeon synth genre, a subgenre of dark ambient music rooted in Tolkien, Dragonlance, and medieval themes. But what the fuck is even a dungeon synth? Where do I start? Can dungeon synth be used as a wall insulation? All of these questions and more will be answered today as we take a deep dive into the most niche of the niche music genre since double speed doom jazz. Real genre, by the way.
I want to listen to that.
So yeah, we're actually going to do something different today and talk about a niche musical genre that actually is rooted in RPGs and things like this, but we're not really talking about an RPG. And we're going to build to something. This is going to be a 2-part episode, so it's going to be this one and the next one that are going to be kind of about similar subjects. I think the listeners will find this interesting because it's so weird and so niche and actually has quite a lot of funny and amusing history behind it. So I think it'll be good. And you know, we've all been listening to a lot of it over the last couple of weeks, doing our little bit of homework. We're going to kind of go through like how it was made. We're going to talk about how it is now and some of the sort of outliers and decent projects, as well as some of the worst and the dramas on the Facebooks. So it should be a good laugh. I hope so anyway.
Of course it will.
So we've talked about the black metal scene before, where we reviewed Varg Vikernes' book Mytharog. We're going to talk about it a bit again today because dungeon synth is really born from two things. The first being dark ambient music, and the second being the second wave of Norwegian black metal, the one with all the church burnings and the stabbings and the Norwegian kids who were really annoyed because the Norwegian life was too nice. So as you may recall, listeners, the second wave of black metal included such cracking bands as Mayhem, Burzum, Dark Throne, to name a few, but the music therein was basically characterised by low production values, dark imagery, shrieking vocals, and bizarre, over-the-top live shows. I mean, for example, the Mayhem used to, cut themselves on stage. They used to go and get goats' heads from restaurants and chuck them into the crowd. They would often say like really grand things like, "Tonight will be my masterpiece." You're playing to 12 people.
Brilliant.
So that kind of and they were teenagers, and it is really a thing that they thought Norwegian life and how well their government looked after these people at the time, it was too comfortable, and people needed to be reminded of real life, so they gave it to them in the form of angry music and goat heads. Another staple of the genre, however, other than chucking goat heads into an audience of 6 people and a dog, was having these really cheaply produced orchestral intros on their albums. And one of the first notable examples being Sylvester and Fang. And I'm sure Sylvester means something. It's not the Looney Tunes character they're talking about here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and this is by Mayhem, and it's on their debut cassette, Death Crush, and it sounds a bit like this.
I wrote my notes when I was listening to everything, so I just wrote, ha 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 ha, I remember my first time using a MIDI making program.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like as well they've got a MIDI program and they've only managed to find the timpani instrument. I mean, it really is rubbish, isn't it? It kind of paved the way for these orchestral intros, but they only use one instrument. And the fun story about this, I can't actually remember who it was, but Mayhem at the time, obviously they're all teenagers, they're doing this on a budget, and the legend goes is that they bothered some German music producer, because they didn't have computers with which to do this, so they just bothered some German guy that made techno or something, said, if you got any weird shit on your hard drive, a song that you haven't released that we can just have, and eventually gave in and sent them that. And I think he's the one that had the last laugh, really, because it's really bad.
Yeah, I said I actually thought that in all seriousness there is a moment of it, if it had a drop to it, and then it changed from the timbre and sounds that are being used, you know what I mean? Then it could actually
What I find
work
funny is
in some
the
way.
way they've... Yeah, exactly. But the way they've used it sounds so unrealistic. And like, you know, the bit where it goes. That's
the bit I just was listening
They've just
to.
got a row of timpanis, and the guy's running down it, just holding the stick in one hand.
That's like a marching band, doesn't it?
It's one of those. It's a kids' marching band that's like, you know, those proper cheap plastic toys. That's what it is.
Yeah. Like, that's exactly what it is. It's like they couldn't afford drums, so they've all got like one of the kids' plastic toy keyboards with the timpani setting on it. Yeah, it's pretty bad. And this is kind of not relevant, but one funny thing as well is that with that debut EP or album, whatever you want to call it, that Mayhem brought out called Death Crush, right? They got all the labels for their cassettes printed up, and they had, you know, satanic imagery, and they were supposed to be a nice bright red colour, but when they got them back from the printers, they were actually pink by accident, so they ended up having to, they couldn't afford to get more printed, so they bought red pens and filled the whole cassette tapes in red instead.
Oh, wow.
Oh my
Which I just think is hilarious. Because imagine being like the first ever satanic, you know, black metal band, and just being like, we have a pink cassette. It is pink like Satan.
I reckon they did it on purpose, the printing press.
To take the piss out of them,
Yeah, just be like, oh, Johnny Black Metal, make it pink.
Got it. Anyway, we all know how the Norwegian black metal scene eventually ended up, right? With the stabbings, the church burnings. But, I mean, the way those young men were carrying on, somebody was going to get hurt. Well, somebody did. Somebody got murdered. But if you want to hear the whole dirty story, go back and listen to the Mythorog episode. But when people talk about the second wave of the black metal scene, they often talk about Mayhem, Burzum, and things like this. But there was a band called Emperor who existed around the same time, whose involvement on the whole scene was like slightly more peripheral. They weren't in like the main, well, what was actually called the Black Circle at the time. And Emperor sound a bit like this.
I quite like that.
I don't mind it either. I mean, it is like badly produced, but I think it's pretty good, and I really like the little vocal shriekings they do in there. To be perfectly honest, that type of vocal talent, like, it wasn't the norm at the time. There was one guy called Dead who was doing what we now think of as black metal vocals, but no, the screaming wasn't really a thing like straight away. And even on like one of Mayhem's albums, you can hear one of the vocals guys was like trying to do something a bit different. A guy called Attila, I think his name was, and he was just talking a bit like this, and that was the vote. And the funny thing is that there's a bit where he's trying to be all dark, and he goes in Transylvania, and it's just like, mate. Mate. But yeah, that's Emperor, and this group of young go-getters was formed in 1991 and consisted of 3 members to begin with: Isan, Samoth, and a bloke called Mortis.
Ooh.
Now, as any school-age rebellious bands that play up to 12 people a night often do, Emperor had some disagreements, and Mortis ended up leaving the band in 1993. I mean, on his Bandcamp page, it says something like, "Got kicked out of Emperor because the regime don't like it, man." But I reckon it was probably a disagreement about whether a song should be about nun dismemberment or priest defilement, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
But this young lad, Mortis, he had a dream. He was to be a successful musician no matter what, and he left his hometown with, one of those little tied packages on the end of a stick put over his back, and a dream in his heart, you know. But then he sort of realised that he didn't have any money, so he went back to his town and started making music in his bedroom. And his experience being in a band left him with a sour taste in his mouth, so he decided to do everything by himself at this point and started producing music using only his cheap Roland keyboard. And in his book, Mortis says that his main inspiration was the musician Tangerine Dream, who used to make tracks that lasted up to an hour and had a dark sort of melancholy to them, and they sounded like this.
I fucking loved Tangerine
Me
Dream.
too.
Yeah, me too, man.
It reminded me, it gave me some Pink Floyd vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that like the atmosphere and
Ominous,
evolution of sounds, like, and the feel that it provided, like a real nice journey.
It's very good. I enjoyed it as well.
Properly loved it.
Yeah. It's absolutely cracking music, and the funny thing is obviously before we continue, I am actually a fan of Dungeon Synth. We're going to talk about what we don't like about it later, but Tangerine Dream was actually used quite a lot in an episode of Black Mirror. I think it was the one where you could play what was going on.
Oh right,
where you got to make the choices.
The Bandersnatch.
Right, and in that he picks up a Tangerine Dream record while he's in a record store, and Millie, my wife, saw the cover and she goes, "That looks like a type of shite you listen to." And I was like, actually, it actually is.
I've got it.
But yeah, Tangerine Dream is cracking, and this really is like the basis, the starting point, the seed for Dungeon Synth, essentially.
I think it's a beautiful seed.
Yeah, it really is, and I would seek them out. But the big difference really between Tangerine Dream and Mortis is that Morty Boy didn't really have expensive synthesizers, a studio, experience with competition, talent. He, by his own admission in his book, by the way, was young and trying to make music in a way he barely knew. That's what he says in his book. And so the same year he got booted out from Emperor, he came out with his first debut as a solo artist with this a song called The Song of a Long Forgotten Ghost.
Yep.
I was like, I said my comments on this, I was like, this is far too repetitive.
Yeah,
I finally got happy when something different happened at 5 minutes 45.
So, this song, the clip you've just heard, is about 50 minutes long and just cycles through the three same riffs over and over again. So that one you heard, if you could stomach an hour of that over and over again, because Tangerine Dream stuff that he was inspired by, it is repetitive, but the thing is, it's much more low key. It's not as... Like, it doesn't have...
Well, it evolves better.
Yeah,
like,
that
it
too.
actually moves through the motions and the repetitive parts way better.
Yeah, so...
Whereas that was just the same thing again and again and again. And I only accidentally listened to that for 15 minutes long because I was doing the laundry, so my hands were occupied.
I was kind of gutted because I used to I got rid of them recently, but I used to collect, Dungeon Synth albums and actually buy physical media. And I got this one, right? And I was like, oh, wow, this is going to be amazing. It's like Mortis's first work, And I was so fucking disappointed. I could only stomach about 10 minutes of it. It's pretty bad. But then the thing about it is that he himself says that he doesn't like it and that he, at the time, didn't have any talent for composition. But this Song of a Long Forgotten Ghost is basically the first ever Dungeon Synth ever. It's primitive and not actually very good, but it was here that the genre was born. And Mortis explained in his book that what he was trying to attempt with the demo was the same type of atmosphere as Tangerine Dream, which he didn't really achieve, but with liberally applied blobs of black metal imagery, with a few sprinkles of Tolkien, and of course your boy Dragonlance, which he was a big fan of. And to put it this way, the easiest way to describe Dungeon Synth now is that it's basically albums filled with just the orchestral intro tracks from black metal groups, and that was what he kind of did, although not well at this point. But while Mortis was achieving some local appreciation and selling this self-published cassette tape, another pretty large component of popularising the genre was through everybody's favourite murderer, Varg Vikernes, whose project Burzum was flung into notoriety after the Norwegian church burnings, and of course Varg's murder of his band member Euronymous. You see, Burzum introduced the rather wacky idea of having synths in black metal albums, shown here in his 1993 album Det Som Engang Var, and I'm so sorry for the pronunciation there. You get the picture. So, obviously a lot of black metal albums at the time included these synth tracks at the beginning, serving as an intro, but what Varg this is going to blow your mind, the level of genius, right? Because he put it in the middle. He put it in the middle, okay? I'll just give you guys a little bit of time to take that in, right? Because, wow. But yeah, but what this means really, though, is that it features as a mainstay song, not just an intro. It's kind of an interlude, but yeah. So in a strange, sort of roundabout way, Mortis invented the genre, but became a little bit more accepted when Burzum further popularised it. Because, at the time, Burzum was king shit of fuck mountain. People thought he was cool. People were doing church burnings in his name. People were stabbing people just for a laugh, And, yeah, so he kind of popularised it. And so Mortis and Burzum kind of had this symbiotic relationship where they helped each other grow, but weren't really acquainted. According to Varg, he'd met him a couple of times, but... it's just kind of funny how that worked out. And that's really the invention of the genre. We'll take a quick musical break here, then come back to talk about where it went from there. That was The Skulls Speak. Creepy. By Null. They're an RPG-inspired dungeon synth act who provide the theme for our Morkborg actual play, so we couldn't not give them a shout out here.
Absolutely.
Cracking stuff. And they actually, they did a one called The Citadel of Evil, which came with an adventure as well, which is not a very good adventure, but great music. So now we're going to move on to part 2 of this saga, how Dungeon Synth became what we know it as today. So we know where the genre started, basically with Burzum and Mortis, but while Burzum got sent to jail for stabbing his bandmate 23 times in self-defense, Mortis's career only went from strength to strength. We got a record deal with Earache Records. Is that a cool name?
Earache.
Extreme, right?
Look, check that out.
Whoa. It's just too intense, man. It's going to give you an earache. I mean, it should be like ear explosion,
Ear defilement.
Ear defilement.
Yes.
Greetings. We are ear defilement.
Ear crust. It should have been called ear crust.
Ear crust. Ear crust. Earwax. We are the gout.
Yes.
And so they released the Earache Records, basically. He got a deal with them and released a slightly better but still quite boring album called Fertilherske, which basically means born to rule. And I think what I did there was racist, sorry. This album, though, Fertilherske, is worth a mention solely for the cover, right? And this is some pretty funny shit. It features Mortis there with a little pointy nose, and he's been done up to look like a creepy goblin wearing a helmet and carrying an axe.
Yeah.
What really makes it, right, is that he's trying to point like in a commanding manner, like, go my armies, but the photo was like obviously taken too close up, so he's pointing in like a, oh no he didn't sort of manner. Like he's like a sassy goblin, right?
Yeah, he is.
And as you can probably guess, guys, this picture gets memed like a lot.
Oh dear.
Like a lot.
Yeah.
And hardcore fans, right, on the groups, like the Facebook group where the drama happens, the hardcore fans fucking hate it because so many people like will get this picture from the cover and like have him pointing and just be like, like I had something like oh no she didn't or shut up bitch or something like that.
Better take that back.
And they hate it, and it got memed, and like Mortis fucking commented on it, and he was like, "Can you just take this shit a bit more seriously, please?" And he's like really angry about it. But you can't help. It's impossible not to think it when you see it.
Yes.
I mean, it's really weird, really weird. But yeah, I mean, whatever you do, just get a decent photographer, all right? Because otherwise you're gonna end up looking like a sassy goblin. That's my advice. But yeah, this album sort of marked the birth of Mortis as a weird creature, because from this point on, he basically began wearing prosthetics and makeup to look like a monster thing. And people are like, I love the fact that
massive
nose, big pointy ears, and like at the moment he's got it so it looks like it's been stitched onto his face. Yeah. But yeah, he basically, people have said like, so what's with the elf makeup? And probably the most pretentious thing ever, he always says, it is not an elf or a goblin, it is Mortis.
Oh.
Too spooky 5 me. But yeah, now we'll shut up about Mortis in a minute, but he is basically the guy that invented the genre. But the final nail in the Dungeon Synth puzzle is his next album, which came out in 1994, called And Den Som Gjorda Pror, which basically means the rebellious spirit. And the good thing about this cover is it doesn't have any meme potential whatsoever. You can't do it. You can't meme it.
Whatever.
As Nick and James have no doubt noticed, in the show notes I've provided the original cover. He actually went and redid it because this one is even more memey. Because at the top of the CD, it's got his face poking out from like a sort of 2 little slats, and he's like, like he's sort of, he looks like he's peering out of it in a creepy way. But underneath it, it's got him sort of. He's mastered the point. He's doing a full length arm point from a distance, but he's pointing at. So it looks like he's pointing at himself coming out the window. And what I found a meme of it where it's the version of him sort of pointing at the face is saying, "Hey, that me? What's that all about?"
So they should have put a nice little sun border around him, and he would have looked like a little goblin sun.
But that's too. We don't deal with suns in this genre. It's moons, darkness, and a lot of pointing.
Sorry, Twilight. Yeah, lots of pointing.
That's one of the and also if you've ever watched Dungeon Synth live, turning your hand in sort of a claw and raising it up. That is also another key part of the genre. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Mate, it's probably the best bit.
It's probably the best bit, and
claw
hands, weird masks, peering out at people and pointing to yourself. Yeah, and you know, the album cover, obviously this one, is probably more memeable than the last one, and as a result, he eventually changed it and got artwork drawn for it. And you won't remember this, Nick, but I sent a picture of it to the group, and you said, uh-oh, hag alert. And it's like, at that point, I realised Mortis's makeup, it looks less like a goblin or a troll than it does sort of a bog hag.
It's like a witch.
Yeah, like a witch.
Yeah, it looks like a witch.
Yeah. It's exactly like the stereotype of a witch. That's what he looks like. But yeah. This
album number 3 is called Broomstick.
I've got to be honest though, this album is a bit of a belter, and this is pretty much the quintessential Dungeon Synth sound that everyone has been trying to replicate since. This is the one that kind of solidified what the sound was, and the genre as a whole probably took more influence from this one album than any other one. Let's have a listen.
Yeah, I love this album.
It's really fun.
Yeah, it is good.
See, I at the very beginning, and when I was listening to this, I listened to the entire album, tried to listen to every single piece that you gave to us to listen to, but I kind of had some old Western vibes.
Yeah, and you know, the weird thing is that some of the really old Dungeon Synth artists that were there at the beginning have made Western influenced Dungeon Synth. Yeah, and it's cracking. The thing about this one is, like, you can tell it's badly produced, but at this point the composition was way better. The point with the genre is really not to look at the composition, the production, because it's never good, but the composition of the song was really good, and also it's like had an epic feel, but while not being so over the top that it gets in the way. Like, you can still think of it as ambient.
Yeah, definitely. That screams to me adventure, but not like high epic adventure.
It's not like listening to the whole orchestra, you know.
Exactly, but that's definitely, you know, it's got a bit of it's not as dark, I don't think, but it's definitely got that adventure, that exciting adventure kind of feel to it.
Yeah, and it contained basically all the elements that became staples in the genre, such as the drum sounds being really distant and not over the top, the excessive reverb, the wiggly strings, and they're like punctuating brass sections. But even the one thing, right, and this is a trend that came within this album that I hate, is talking over the music with loads of effects on your voice for some reason, so that you can't understand what they're saying.
In the dark.
And one of the first ones I ever listened to was one called Mourn Lord. Like, he's the lord of being sad, right? And it's like such a cracking album, but for the whole thing, you can hear him talking. He's putting an effect on his voice to make it really deep. And he's like, "And in my kingdom, I will something army and also swords." And it's like, shut up! I want to listen to the music, for fuck's sake.
You see, I actually thought that although the voiceover is very annoying, I don't think it detracted too much from the feel of the music. I mean, it definitely could have done without it.
Yeah, I agree. But in this album, the Rebellious Spirit, Mortis one, I don't think it takes away from it too much because it's kind of subtle and backgroundy. But I have heard ones where the bloke likes the sound of his voice more than the music. And it's like,
yeah,
Christ. But yeah,
they are annoying. It's just like, I'm talking over the top.
Yeah. I mean, I might start doing that just with our jingles. I mean, they've already got my vocals on it, but I just might be going, "This is the main subject." Oh, actually, people will notice I've done Dungeon Synth versions of all of our jingles for this episode, so that's why they sound different.
Yes, mate.
But yeah, basically every single staple of the genre was cemented in this album, but perhaps more importantly, this record was the first album of his that was put out by a label called Cold Meat Industry. They didn't also do meat, it's just a name. But these guys basically had a wider reach and were known for putting out really niche, really avant-garde, experimental, synthy, gothic stuff. So, and they had an audience. Like, at the time, it was like, if you were into ambient music, you knew who these guys were. So that's why this album in particular got like more wide reach, essentially. And Mortis, even though he can kind of be seen as a lolcow, right, and has spawned a whole genre of memes, he also spawned, you know, the whole genre of music, and it's as detailed and as varied as any other genre out there, and enjoyable as any. And by that I mean there's a lot of toilet ones out there. There's a lot of rubbish. So just like any other genre, it's the same here. You have to kind of search out the good ones, and that's going to lead us to the third part of this whole thing, which is the state of the genre today and the classics. You ready, boys?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so the current landscape of what Mortis calls dark dungeon music, he actually hates the title Dungeon Synth. He calls it dark dungeon music, which is basically the same. But yeah, as I mentioned, it's quite varied, and there's basically, at the moment, there's three main categories to the genre. There's hundreds of subgenres, but there's three main ones. You have the Mortis style, which is called old school dungeon synth, and then there's medieval dungeon synth, which kind of adds in folk elements and is often just called dungeon synth. But then there's some old school stuff that's just called dungeon synth as well, so it's a bit muddy there, really. And I'd say the third most popular style is probably the chiptune style, which is basically 8-bit or video game sounding stuff. Also, the other main one really is Tolkien synth, but that's just old school dungeon synth, but they've used the Lord of the Rings Wikipedia and clicked a random article to name all their songs, basically, so I don't think that really counts as a genre. And we will kind of first up talk about the Mortis style, old school dungeon synth, and we'll start by showing you a couple of examples, starting with, I think I'm pronouncing this wrong, Thangodorim, which is a Tolkien-inspired old school act that sounds like this.
Is this the album Tarnúfin?
Tarnúfin. For Christ's sake, like
one.
Dungeon Synth people, name your shit so people can find it. For goodness sake. But yeah, this is the one. And I've got to be honest, I actually really like this one.
Me too.
But it's got a lot of the talking over it. But I actually find for some reason it adds to it here, despite the fact you can't understand the words.
It's the effect, and you can't hear really what he's saying, so it's more just like, uncomprehendable sound.
Yeah, it's like a speech
human
in the
voice.
background,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and because it's all like reverby and echoey, it's it works. It works all right.
I thought that firstly this is a very good concept album because each song ties together like really well. But I also think that it would be so much better if it got remastered.
He's done a remaster, actually. He actually has. The sad thing about the remaster is that it's marginally better, but it deserves a new treatment. And I reckon that he could do it because it's not like Mortis, when he remade and remastered his stuff, he remade the tracks from scratch because obviously he didn't have the source files anymore. He probably used different software. But this album, despite sounding really old school, came out in 2018. So I reckon he should do a full remake remaster. That'd be fucking great. Next up, I actually find this one as well as like perfect for the gaming table because it's epic but not overbearing. It's not like that over the top. But yeah, and another one we kind of have to talk about is Old Tower. So you can kind of see where the old school Dungeon Synth sound has this certain instrumental makeup at this point. Do you know what I mean? Like, they all kind of follow the same patterns. And I really like Old Tower, but I like them both.
That's more foreboding, isn't it? That one?
It is. And Old Tower is also where my main problems with old school Dungeon Synth come in, which is kind of why I put it in here. You see, when Mortis started his solo music, right, he said that he was so arrogant, like that he believed at the time that he was a god and whatever he imagined was coming true somewhere in a universe of his own creation, and that his body was just a vessel for this god. As such, right, all of Mortis's songs are titled and themed after the universe he supposedly rules and created. Now, he himself admitted in his book that he was a fucking idiot and stopped believing this nonsense a while ago. And he said that he attributes that feeling to becoming semi-famous in his teen years, right? So, but here's the trouble. Most people that are really into this genre don't know that he said that, because barely anyone I've ever spoken to in this scene has read the Mortis book cover to cover. And I even put out on the bigger of the Facebook groups a question asking if anyone had actually read it, and most people said that they had read a tiny bit, just the interviews, or none at all. And so the average old school Dungeon Synth fan is unaware that Mortis decries this probably mental illness that he used to have, and that he hates the old version of himself where he's like, this is my universe. So let me read you Old Tower's sort of blurb from his site, right, from his Bandcamp page. Old Tower, always capitalised, by the way, Old Tower is the creation of a mysterious entity from the Netherlands known as the Spectre, who through the vessel of Old Tower creates alluring yet meditative otherworldly lo-fi synth music that transports the listener to a long-forgotten age of memories past. It was through the split with Oroduin when the concept of Old Tower and the Shadow Kingdom came into existence, and since then Old Tower has collected an alluring repertoire through split cassette releases and EPs that culminated with the first Old Tower full-length The Rise of the Spectre.
We they're just one trying to be Mortis in that, but we saw Old Tower, the smokescreen specialist, didn't we?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, first of all, you read that Bandcamp thing and you're like, come on, mate.
The Old Tower. Sorry.
I mean, the very person he's trying to copy says that is a bloody stupid thing to do. And as James mentioned, another fucking thing is that Mortis back in the 90s used to make really bizarre stage live shows, right? Where he didn't play the instruments, he just marched around stage doing a big ritual. And some of his like early planning notes for his gigs, right? He says something like, "I sail in on an ocean of fog." And it's yet another thing that he cringes about nowadays, right? But apparently Old Tower didn't get that memo, because despite the fact that I like his tunes, his live show was the worst gig I've ever been to in my entire life.
Me and H went there, and it was a couple
Was
of years
that the
back.
one that you send in videos of?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like we were at the front purposely, pushed through to make sure we could get straight to the front. Yeah, because it was a big deal, I thought. And then we basically just saw him standing there, sort of clicking his laptop, and then every now and then you see his finger hovering over the fucking smoke button, and then it's like really shaky because he was really nervous, and then. It's just like, that's it.
Yeah, and the sad thing is,
cover it up so no one can see.
The fucking smoke. Yeah, it was next to his keyboard to cover up the fact that, like, I'm not being silly here, right? Me and James produce music. You can tell when somebody's miming. You can so easily tell.
Yeah.
And you didn't even have to employ an eagle eye with this guy, because sometimes he would be playing the keyboard, right? And he's clearly just playing it out of his laptop. And he'd stand there playing his keyboard, and then he'd walk away from it and start gesturing around the stage, doing the claw hand, and nothing would change in the music. So that's a dead giveaway that you're not doing anything. And like at certain points, right, he was pretending to sort of do something with his laptop, and so he crouched down. So if you imagine somebody peering over a wall, but just their nose and eyes are above it, he was doing that behind a table, and it was like the most unevocative, unimaginative rubbish I've ever seen in my life. All he did was occasionally operate a smoke machine. And, we talked to some guys outside and we're like, what the fuck was that? We just saw it. It's like, and one of the guys said, it's more about the atmosphere. And I'm like, but I can get that at home from listening to the good music he makes. Like, my opinion is, if you can't play live and if you don't have the budget to kind of really do anything amazing with your live show, like, for example, Deadmau5, the DJ, does. He puts on a big show. He himself admits that he just presses play, but he puts on a big show. If you don't have the budget to do that, you don't have the inclination to play live, don't play live. There are plenty of really good musicians. For example, JME, a rapper that I really like, he says that he doesn't waste money on live shows. He just does his shit on YouTube now, and it's like, just do that. Why is it so important to you to play live that you're just going to set up a laptop and sort of dance around the stage doing a claw hand and occasionally going, rah!
Yeah, well, it's true.
Because Dungeon Synth.
Yeah, exactly. And we were really excited, because the gigs playing this music don't come around often, and we got to see one of the biggest, and it was so disappointing. And at one point, I was bitching about it outside, a bit drunk and a bit belligerently, and he was sitting there, and we only realised after about 5 minutes.
Oops.
They're staring at us, and we're just like, good show. Bye.
But yeah, I mean, that is basically it for old school Dungeon Synth, and a bit of a rant about the live playing. Unfortunately, old school stuff is rooted in some of the more silly traditions that the progenitors of the genre have moved on from. But if you enjoy it merely for the music, some of the best acts are found here, basically, in the old school subgenre. But the next one I kind of want to mention is the medieval Dungeon Synth thing.
Yes.
And I don't know if I like much of this, but one of the most popular ones is a guy called Fife. So, yeah, this is actually a pretty decent album. That's Fife. His album simply called 2. It's this, I don't know if you can grasp this, ladies and gentlemen, but it's the second one he did. So,
oh, wow.
I know, clever.
Steady
but yeah,
on,
for some
there.
reason, like, I can't put my finger on. I don't dig this style too much, and I think it too closely. I mean, loads of people like it. I'm aware I'm an outlier here, but I think it straddles the line of the uncanny valley feeling. Like, it almost sounds like a song made with real instruments as opposed to being synth based.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
When I said I've said that although they're very well-rounded songs in the genre portrayed, but for me it lacks some more like percussive sounds and something in the lower frequencies.
Yeah.
So I think like if they added something and like with those elements where there was a bit more low end in the production and stuff, it could have been a much better album.
So hearing that screams to me like, you know, village scene from an RPG video game.
And I think that's what it's kind of trying to be. And I think it succeeds. I think it does. But the only thing is, I think it just lacks that slight bit of depth. But I like some medieval type stuff. And, you know, the weird thing is this is from... The guy that makes this is the same guy that makes Thangodorum, which is a different subgenre, and it's his other project. So this is his side one. And it's like... I kind of miss the kind of muddiness and the excessive reverb of old school stuff. Yeah, but it's just not as to my taste. But I do like some of the folky stuff. And the absolute best in the folky genre of Dungeon Synth is easily Morodim. And what's kind of great about this is she used American folk as the basis of her sound rather than Middle Ages England. And so for this reason, it has like a really unique feeling to any other act out there. And additionally, she sings in it too, which is really rare.
I think this really is really nice. Like, I really enjoyed her vocals on it.
Yeah, it's cracking.
It added to the feeling of the songs, and it did one thing which I enjoy most about music in general, which is to either add to or portray like passion or emotions.
Yeah,
I love that kind of thing in music, and this didn't. It wasn't like, oh, you're just like sad or whatever. You could tell that she was passionate about the music she was making. And you could
that's awesome.
hear it.
That's
nice.
folklore in sound, isn't it?
Yeah, totally, 100%. And you know, like, it's as you say, there's like an earnestness where she really put herself into the music, and I think in certain aspects that is lacking somewhat in the genre. And I find that this kind of she's kind of an outsider artist because she did things her own way, but really smashed it. And it's like kind of, you know, childlike innocence as well. And like, while the production is obviously really amateur, obviously, I think it actually in this case, because of the specific sounds she uses, it's like it only adds to the charm. And to me, it really has this sort of innocence, like a Daniel Johnston album or something like this, but for Dungeon Synth. And she was a really incredible talent. And seeing her tunes taken to the next level, like, would have been fucking amazing. If she'd put out like another album and done even better production on it, would have been amazing. But I love her voice too, but sadly, unfortunately, she took her own life in 2019, which is only a couple of years ago, which is really fucking sad. And I know this isn't a serious show, so we're not going to dwell on it, but I fucking love the music. Like, absolutely love it.
Yeah, me too.
It's proper nice.
But I always find it really fucking like tragic. And I know this isn't really the main point, but when you discover an artist that you really like, and you discover there's a really sad backstory to it, and
it's just like,
part of what made it special was that she put those feelings into the music, but it's also what eventually led her to do that. So it's like it's really depressing, but it's a fucking great album, and I would recommend it to everyone. But yeah, it's a belter and worth a listen. But with that, so that we can get back to being a bit silly, we're going to take a little musical break.
was The Foretelling by Morodim. Cracking tune. And yeah, obviously at this point we were talking about, the current state of the genre and where it is at the moment, is you've got these old school ones, you've got these medievally ones, things like this. And the part 4 of this is going to be the memes and the controversy, right? so far we've we've looked at old school, medieval. I mentioned the subgenre of 8-bit and things like this, but some people don't really believe that 8-bit stuff is real dungeon synth. And that's like one of the biggest issues with the scene at the moment. You see, many people have strongly held beliefs that the scene is not a place for jokes or frivolity, that it should be a serious like 100% of the time, and it should follow certain rules, right? Whereas some people see the musical genre as freeing, loosely defined, and where a bit of silliness is not only okay, but part of it. I think I fall into that camp as well because, let's be honest, it's a bloke on a synth in his bedroom, or a woman, and they're making songs about goblins, Yeah. And I personally, I like the silliness, and I like to see it embraced, and that's where acts like Diplodocus come in.
Oh, yes.
This guy invented Dino Synth, and I bet the scene would have torn him apart if his music wasn't fucking cracking.
Oh, it's so good.
It really is.
See, I said this is quite adorable to me.
Yeah, it is.
Because I really like the interesting use of sound effects in it.
Yeah.
That actually work quite well, giving it a rustic feel.
And he's like, the way the music is composed as well, it really sounds dinosaur-y, which sounds weird to say, but it's so fucking good,
that's
man.
what's mad, because if someone turned around to me and said, right, do you want to know what dinosaurs sound like musically? And I'm like, fuck off, mate. And then I'd just be like, all right, I can't really argue with that.
Well, put it this way.
I think it's because there's a bunch of mistakes in the recording, but I think that just adds to it being a bit more endearing.
Yeah, I mean, because that's one of the things I love, is that when you can tell like how it was made. Do you know what I mean? And, I fucking love Diplodocus. It's so good, and the sound is just amazing and epic. And, like, if that was fully orchestrated, you could see it being a film soundtrack. You know what I mean?
Mate, do you know what the vision I get in my head when I'm listening to that is like, the big meteors coming down to destroy the dinosaurs. They can see it in the sky, and they're all slowly plodding away from it to try and survive, but they all know they're doomed, and that is exactly what it is.
And his album's even called Slow and Heavy, which is the name of the album. And I think
it's fantastic.
What's cool as well, I shared a video with you two guys, and we talked about Dungeon Synth being played live and how shitty it is, but fucking Diplodocus, he performs in a dinosaur mask and a leather jacket, which is just the coolest.
So good.
It's so funny. And
so good.
I saw him,
Legend.
and he actually plays live as well, which is fucking great. And
yeah, I love it. That is good stuff.
Yeah, it really is. And I think it fully sums up why the silly aspects of Dungeon Synth should be exaggerated, not denied, because it's the goofiest idea ever. If somebody said, I'm doing dino music, but it's just so fucking banging. It's stupid.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but who gives a shit?
But it sounds good.
Yeah.
It sounds good. That's the thing. You can't deny it. Like, whether it's come from the etiquette side or not, the sound remains the same if it's good or bad, and that sounds good.
Right, exactly. And yeah, I mean, and also worth listening to in sort of the meme type genre, or the people that really embrace the silliness, is a Forklift Operator. This is a belter of an album, and it's basically inspired by the Shenmue games, because a big part of Shenmue was you got a job as a forklift operator, and so he made an album called Warehouse Number 1, and it's so good. It's like Asian influenced Dungeon Synth, and it's fucking great.
Mm-hmm. You see, I'd say that this isn't necessarily Dungeon Synth, but I can see what it's categorised in that genre.
Yes.
I'd say it's kind of edges on the it's more synth wavy than Dungeon Synth.
Yeah, it is.
The essence of the Japanese and Asian themes is captured exceedingly well in the album.
And you got to love the fucking cover as well, because so many covers of Dungeon Synth acts, it'll be like a scene of a forest with a witch in it or whatever. But his is just a beautifully rendered forest with a forklift sitting in it, a beam of light shining down upon it. It's like it's so good, man. And the actual physical version of the album actually has like if you buy a tool and it's got like a little band around it with safety messages on it. It's got that on it, like forklift safety stuff. Fucking great.
Very good.
But you see, one of the major problems is that so many arguments are started because of projects with an odd theme. So on the Facebook, it doesn't matter if it sounds a certain way. If I released an album that sounded exactly like Mortis, but I put a Moomin on the front cover, people would go fucking mental. I mean, that is a bad example because for some reason the Dungeon Synth community love Moomins. But, like, let's say I made Muppet Synth or something. No, in fact, I made a fucking Dungeon Synth project, right, as a complete joke, obviously, where I did EastEnders-based Dungeon Synth. And it got me banned from the group. But how is EastEnders different from something about a forklift? I don't get. Where's the line?
But your EastEnders track was fucking
really
wicked, man.
I listened to it all the way through this morning.
Oh, it was
you put a lot of effort into that. I'm not gonna lie.
And I even did the thing with the voice clips over the music. But I put in the I became a total slag, and then it like bam. So somehow though, some of these projects make it through if they're good enough, like Mortis and Forklift Operator. But then some of them cause so much drama. And for example, when a project called Grandma's Cottage came out with a new genre of that he called Comfy Synth, people threatened a boycott of the main groups and a mass exodus if talking about Comfy Synth continued. The biggest controversy probably comes from the people who are trying to meme your ass. Diplodocus, Grandma's Cottage, although a bit cringe, were created with like a bit of sincerity. But people just hate when somebody is like they're getting in there and they're not taking it 100% seriously. And the Mortis, the picture of him pointing right there. Oh no, she didn't. Right, I saw one guy post. He posted that picture and he's like, "Look, I get it. It's funny. It's a weird picture, but can we just bow down for a minute and accept that this guy's a god of our genre?" I'm like, "Shut up, mate. Listen to yourself. No wonder you're single and making music by yourself in a basement."
Loser. Trying to suck ass.
It is the biggest ass sucking, isn't it? I hate it.
Fucking Grandma's Cottage, right? While the genre, album, artist name were meant to be a joke to the scene, they were remarkably well executed songs and really did itself justice. So I think that's probably why it stuck around and sparked the Marmite controversy over it.
I hate the term comfy synth. It makes me cringe.
Yep.
But it's almost like ASMR in music form. It's quite nice. But yeah, I hate it. But some outsiders, they see these types of thing as ammo. Like people outside of the scene will use it to mock the scene. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And
mock away.
Can't you just call it dark synth and light synth?
Yeah, something like that. And the biggest problem is the images that people are trying, and when they take it seriously, I think that actually does a disservice to the genre, because at this point, people will take the piss out of you and say they're taking it seriously, but if they weren't, there's nothing to take the piss out of. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just make good tunes. But yeah, and but there are some people that are making projects to actively mock the scene, and that's when you get things like Groll the Goblin. Only stomach a about 4 seconds of that. Now, the thing about Grohl the Goblin is that his music was obviously made in about 5 minutes, and all of his covers are just Microsoft Paint art. And this was meant to mock the scene for the inherently goofy things in it, like the poorly drawn covers, the low effort music. And guess what? The scene fucking lapped up Grohl the Goblin. They didn't realise that it was a joke at their expense, and tons of people bought his shit. He released tapes, ended up being able to fund professional artwork, and made a good buck off of that rubbish. So I think there's a big problem. There is a big problem when you can't tell if something is a joke. And this is going to bring us actually to probably the second biggest controversy ever in the scene. Part 5, we're going to talk about Castronata Prototype.
Really?
Now, here's the thing about Castronata Prototype is that all of their music and any trace of their existence has been deleted off the planet. So I can't show you their music. I can't, right? But these guys, essentially, to mock the scene, and they made a project called Castronata Prototype, wherein they made songs that at most were 2 minutes long, at the least sometimes 20 seconds. And they had really hastily drawn artwork, and they came up with this whole backstory about how their rare demo got lost in a studio fire, and now it's finally resurfaced on Bandcamp.
Oh my God, I remember when this happened.
Yeah, and it was crazy
I
because
remember when this was going on.
There's about 6,000 members of the community. Half of them realised it was a joke and decried them immediately, and half of them thought it was sincere and that it was cracking music, and it was terrible. I mean, that is sort of a subjective thing, but it was really bad. It was often just like a drone, and then they just noodle on their keyboard over the top of it. And the funny thing about these guys as well is that they made this, and it caused this controversy because it was people arguing over whether or not what they were trying to do was legit. And they ended up, selling tapes, and nobody got their tapes. So what they were doing is they were stealing money off people, but they'd get some of their mates to take pictures with the one tape they had and say, oh, this arrived today, brilliant.
So pleased.
Yeah, so they were scamming people out of money. And the scam even went further, where I was heavily involved with the admin of the group in locating and banning other Facebook profiles, because they can constantly get banned, remake new Facebook profiles, and remake.
Now I remember this. Yes,
and they were at the point where they were able to fart out an album a day, and we're releasing new projects saying we're from South Africa, we're from Norway, we're from Japan, all of this stuff. It got to the point where every day for about 4 or 5 months there were new projects coming up from these guys. And the funny thing about all of this was that eventually they did an interview, and we had this rivalry to the point where I was telling people not to buy their shit, not to spend money on the tapes they weren't going to send. They started hating me, and I said their music was pure piss, and they put it on the cover of their next hastily made album, a quote from me. Made another album taking the piss out of one of my projects at the time, and then continued to make all this music. And there was this sort of groundbreaking interview with one of the Bandcamp pages where they said they were going to come clean with everything, and they didn't. They just built more on top of the lies, even going so far as to say, like, there was stuff that I proved, that I found that proved that the album wasn't made in 1995 when they said it was. For example, on the cover picture, one of them was using a synth that wasn't invented until 2010. So, shit like this. Anyway, they did this interview and just doubled down on it, and more just said, like, oh yeah, but no, this, and gave this excuses for this, that, and the other. And they said, that actually, the fire did happen, but the cover was made much later because they never got round to it back in 1995.
Fuck off.
So, in the end, the sales of their music, once people started to realise that these guys were charlatans, weren't sending out the stuff they should have been, and were making hastily made rubbish music, they finally did an interview where they came clean about everything, absolutely everything. And I'd been battling with them for months, trying to get all of their accounts banned, things like this. Ended up with them doing an interview where they were honest, and they said they were sorry, and that they were trolling people, and they were going to try harder and make genuinely good music. I've got to be honest, when you win in a situation like that, it felt fucking good to have finally made them come clean. But
yeah,
and I was not a good winner. I'll tell you this now, right? Because I remember seeing the post and gloating on it, and I was like, I have won. You will kiss my shoes, you piece of shit. And like all of this, I really went mental.
Oh, yes.
And loads of people were like, God, he's being really immature here. And I'm like, I don't care, man. I'm going to gloat the fuck out of this situation because I won. Right?
That was a lot of time and effort that had to be put in, because they were. Quite honestly, some of the best trolls that I've ever lived on the Dungeon Synth.
Totally, man.
Group.
And
because they were just
Where do they come
did
from?
well
Do you know?
to fool so many people?
Did you ever find out where they actually came from?
No, unfortunately not. The thing is that I never did find that out, and then eventually, after a while, when their new stuff wasn't working out, they kind of scrubbed all their Facebook profiles, scrubbed all of their music off the internet. And I have a theory, two theories actually, that I know they're still out there in the scene making shitty music. And there are two things that kind of fit the bill as to what they used to do, because they had a certain style of artwork and a certain sound that you could recognise as them. And the Facebook profiles that posted their stuff, you could easily tell it was them because they never showed their face, often used really gory imagery, things like this. And currently there's two. There's one called Dungeon Troll, which could easily be them just by virtue of the name. And if you listen to how simple the music is, they've put a bit more effort into the covers of their albums, so I don't know. The other one is, I think they might be going under the moniker of High Mage Productions, which is a fake label, and I think it hosts about 9 or 10 different projects, and I think they all belong to the Castronato Prototype guys. Because they basically released 4 demos on there, and then they released stuff like a Hot Dog Cart. Yeah, so High Mage Productions, I'm fairly certain it's them, because all of the projects are kind of similar, and the artwork is similar. And so they released this really horrible thing. And Hot Dog Cart is one of the worst pieces of music ever made. It's literally, all it is somebody playing a keyboard demo, and then they've got a sampler off to the side, and they're going, hot dog, hot dog. I'll put a clip of it here, but it's 15 minutes long, and it could have been made in less time than it takes to listen to the album. No. See, the thing is, and that the reason it's worth talking about the Castronata thing after such a long time is because it really demonstrates how easy it is to fool people just by using imagery that they're used to and making crap music. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with the genre in general, is you can't tell sometimes when something is shit or a meme, or that it's just somebody that isn't very good at music trying their best. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that brings me neatly onto a couple of things as well. There's a lot of really dodgy record labels out there, because it's mainly small bedroom outfit record labels. And I got an email recently actually for one of my projects that was from a label called Wolf Rune Walks. And to get your tape, you have to just PayPal them money and email them which one you like. And the offer they gave me to start putting out my music was, they said, well, what we do is we'll start putting out your cassette, and we will send you high quality printed J cards with which to make your own cassette. So the paper part of the cassette. I'm like, so you take my music, make money off it, and send me paper. I was like, I'm alright, mate. I'm alright,
thanks.
Yeah. And then the other biggest controversy was that the guy running the main group, a guy called Canrith Knox, was also doing sort of the same thing the Castronata guys would do. He'd sign people to his label and then not send them any royalties or any money, and make a shitload of cash off of loads of other people's shit. And it was like,
I can't believe all this shadiness is going on in this little subgenre of music. It's crazy. In
a community that's only about 6,000 people. Yeah. It's like, it's probably the nichest genre on the planet. And there's so much drama. There's so much.
Mate.
What was great though is Canrith Knox,
mate.
The guy is very childish, but the guy who was scamming people, Canrith Knox, he had a record label called Hollow Myths, and what was really funny is he he said to me once, I made a meme of him, and he was like, "Can you take that down, please? I don't want to be a meme." And he has become the biggest meme now. And people have made sort of like a bobblehead image of him where he's throwing some toys out of a pram and he's got chocolate around his mouth.
Yes.
But yeah, it's so funny, man. And do you know what? The genre, for the people that are actually properly into it, they meme pretty hard. And it's there's a group called Dungeon Synth posting, and it's got the Dr. Pepper logo, but it says Dungeon Synth instead, and people meme really hard. And there's some fucking funny memes.
I don't know, where was it birthed?
Not sure.
Because there's this really weird cult thing with the Dungeon Synth posting lot where there's this obsession with Dr. Pepper.
I don't know why it is. And like somebody,
I think someone just sparked it, like maybe saw a can of Dr. Pepper in a picture.
Well, the whole thing wasn't like Dr. Pepper's whole like advertising campaign was about it being a bit different, but
it
special.
might be something like that. I've no idea. But yeah, basically, there's a lot of childish drama, and yeah, I contributed to it because I gloated over the Castronata guys. But I've got to be honest, like, it is crazy how often a drama will spark up for something so innocent as somebody making Grandma's Cottage. Do you know what I mean? People take this shit way too seriously. So, I mean, that's basically it. As we make this episode, currently the yearly Dungeon Synth Festival, Northeast Dungeon Siege, is happening, an online event. And where we stand today is kind of, this is kind of the picture that we're at. It's like old school stuff that sounds like Mortis gets really lifted up. People like medieval shit, people argue over shit, and it is crazy how much controversy there can be about the smallest things. And for the final part here, we're going to kind of discuss the genre. And just do a bit of a wrap up here. I wanted to kind of talk about where all of this was leading, because Mortis, as I mentioned, you know, for this whole career, he's alluded to the fact that his songs all take place in a world of his own imagination, and people tend to picture things in their mind as to what it's going to be like, and they think it's going to be amazing. And Mortis released a book containing all the details about his world. And, you know, people say that Eye of Argon is the worst fantasy book ever published, but I'm fairly certain Mortis's book is. But you need the context to be able to understand how bad this fucking thing is, because this is like early 90s, so it's like, you know, 20 years of build up for us to finally see what his world actually was like.
Works,
and it was just, and a setting book that you can use in an RPG, and it is fucking terrible, man. That is what our next episode is going to be about. We're going to talk about the worst fantasy book ever published, and my God, it falls to depths you would never imagine it could get that bad. You know, It is really quite a good read. And the sad fact about all of this is that I bought it, read it cover to cover, and then immediately sold it. And to do the fucking review next episode, I had to buy it again. So it's not only the worst, but I've bought it twice.
Oh, wow.
Hardcore fan, mate. Hardcore.
Yeah, and to just recap our recommendations, well, my recommendations, just, Morrodim is pretty much the best one. Diplodocus, Thangodorum, all of those guys, really, really fucking good shit. But yeah, let's talk about quickly our feelings and what we think the genre needs, you know, what we like, what we don't like. And I'll start and just say that as much as I love the genre and I love it for background music, I also love the sort of underground muddiness of it, you know what I mean? And how weird it is. But I think that what it really needs is a big fat dose of less elitism, less gatekeeping, less rules, more fun.
Open that gate.
But yes, exactly. I love so much about the genre that it's actually very, very fun to make. It's fun to listen to, and the community can be amazing. I mean, for example, I started a group for UK musicians, and I've got to tell you, some of the best acts out there at the moment come from the UK, and some of the biggest ones too. And I kind of started the group, and we made a compilation of all of our music together, and it was fucking great. And the UK scene is amazing.
Funny thing was, it started off as a joke, didn't it? But then it actually birthed into
something quite great.
a good collection of people.
Yeah, because it was kind of funny, because we were trying to think of a funny name for our group, well, not like a cool name for our group, and at the time it was just called Great Britain Dungeon Synth, and then we just thought GBDS, and so we called it Gibdus.
Gibdus, yeah.
I don't know if anyone is actually, and it was funny as well, because some of the northern guys in the Gibdus chat, they said that they wanted to start I think it was a northwestern one called Nawabdus.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, the thing is, the community has this really great, like, let's all pitch in together, share ideas type thing, but then there's the elitists that have been in there since the beginning who really hate the new lot and really hate people not taking it too seriously, and that's what it really needs to carry on. And if I can say one thing as well that is not exactly, this is kind of controversial, is that I would love it if the production was better. And if don't take my opinion for it, if you all like that old production, that's fine. I do too. But the only thing is that Mortis has moved on, and probably the other biggest artist in the scene, a guy called Irang, has moved on, and they've started doing more industrial type production and more production where they have cleaner sounds but epic orchestral sounds, and it's served the music really well. Like Mortis's album, the Rebellious Spirit one, probably his best album, he remade the whole thing from scratch with better production, and it's the version that he plays when he plays live, and it's better for it. It's a much better thing, versions of the songs, and I think if people learnt to produce a bit better, it would be nice. But currently, the way it stands, if I sat down and produced my music in a way that everything was audible and it wasn't just muddied together, people wouldn't buy it. They just wouldn't. And that kind of annoys me. Whereas what I'm doing at the moment, where I purposely make it sound a bit shit, I've seen a lot of success with it. And my current project is a secret, and I'm not going to tell anyone who it is. But the only thing is that I've done better than ever, and I've tried. I literally do nothing with the production. It's like first go, no mixing, there, done,
gritty.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like it's nice for the proper novices who are doing it. It's a really good genre to get into because your music can be appreciated. But like Harrison's saying, I really do think there should be, at least, there should be an evolution to your music. If you're going to start off and do that, then it should, any proceeding album that comes out should have better production, better mixing and stuff like that, and you should be able to hear that, because hopefully you're learning from what's going on. If you're a novice in this world and you're doing like random music and people are enjoying it, then you ultimately need to get better at it.
I agree, and that's part of the reason. Like Mortis, he left the scene for a while because he felt, and so did Irang actually, and both of them felt as if, and they said in interviews, they felt as if the genre had stagnated because nobody wants to evolve beyond the type of production they were using 30 years ago.
Right.
And that is kind of sad, but then if you're Mortis, you can do whatever you like and people will lick your ass. So he's updated the genre, but nobody's going in that same direction. I made a tune that was kind of similar, but it's like, I just didn't release it because I know nobody's going to give a shit unless it sounds like it was recorded at the end of a hallway on a headset mic.
But the annoying thing is, though, is like with our listening homework that we was doing to go through some of them, that Mortis Smell of Rain one that's got the disco funk dungeon metal, it's cracking.
It's such a good album, and that. I remember, like, when I heard that, I was like, "Wow, this really can be fucking amazing if we took more innovations, But it's like, it's kind of stuck. Like, but he gets to do it. Why is he allowed to make disco funk dungeon metal and I'm not? Okay,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
That
album was well fun. It gave me some Bowie and Rammstein vibes.
Totally, man, totally. But yeah, I mean that's basically my opinions on it at the moment. I really like the genre, and I really like to listen to it as background music, which I know is kind of a bad thing to say, but I do, and I also think one main thing, one of my gripes with it, is that it's quite easy to listen to the genre and think that it doesn't necessarily need talent to produce something, when in reality, you listen to all the stuff we've listened to today, the best ones are the ones where they had good composition, good musicality to them, where they've thought about the composition of it. And the worst ones we've listened to are, where they haven't thought about it a bit and they've put no effort in. And it does take effort. It just doesn't necessarily take effort on the production side to get stuff people are going to like, but you still have to make good tunes. That's what I think what we can take from this.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, how about you guys? Do you think you'll continue listening to the genre after this episode?
Yeah, I mean, I like the stuff. It's perfect for you know, it goes hand in hand with role-playing games, especially, you know, or any type of role-playing game really that you're playing. You can use some of this stuff for it. I think it's made for it. From what I've learned today, I think that you're absolutely right. You've got the people that want to keep it in the past, and you've got people that want to push it forward. I think everybody should work together. You know, if you want to keep it old school, label it as that, you know, and then everybody knows that it's used with the old methods. It's going to sound a certain way, and people won't expect surprises. But then also embrace new stuff, make it different, because the more diverse the music is as well, the more you can apply it to different games if it is your background music thing, you know.
And it does actually go hand in hand with RPGs, and there's a lot of really great projects out there who've made music specifically for RPGs, and one, and it's a cracking name, just called the Synth Bard.
Nice.
He makes shit like this, and he made an album called, I think it might have just been Ravenloft, you know, but yeah, he made a whole album where he's made.
Wasn't it called the unofficial soundtrack for Ravenloft?
That's it. That's right.
That's the one.
And it's
and it's fucking tidy, mate.
It's really good and spot on, like the way it's made. And he, so he's got a different song for every room in the original Ravenloft adventure, which is just really cool. I mean, really I can't see myself actually flipping through tracks at a game, but it's the atmosphere of it is spot on. Yeah, so I guess we're done with the main subject, but we're going to do I think we haven't done in about 3 years. We're going to do Song Fight. Let's get into that now. So, I'm not sure what we're trying to prove with this edition of Song Fight. And for those that don't know, Song Fight is where we'll often make a song on a specific subject, me and James, and Nick will have to pick his favourite.
Yep.
In this particular case, because we do want the songs to be funny, and I thought the only way we could possibly make Dungeon Synth Song Off funny was that instead of having like a couple of weeks to produce a song, you would have 20 minutes, and that included downloading any samples or anything like this. So I will. Who wants to go first? Actually, Nick, you pick who wants to go first.
I would like to hear James's first.
Yeah, so would I actually.
All right.
Actually banging.
Yeah, it is.
I think you've really nailed the sound of it. I'm sorry, I'm going to listen to the end, but I think you've actually got it spot on.
Oh, mate.
I'm really gutted, man, because I thought I was definitely going to win this one, because I was like, I think I've nailed the sound, but you pretty much did as well.
But you even brought a bit of memery in as well. So you started. The thing is, it was almost like a journey, because you started off with like classic, or what I would imagine would be, deemed as classic, classic Dungeon Synth, and then like it got higher. There was a cheeky little bit of drum in there, and then.
See, I was thinking of going in a similar direction, right, and just sort of disguising another song. There is a little bit of memory to mine as well, but not quite as good as James's.
I like how it starts similarly.
Yep. Close your eyes, get the full experience. What is that?
We've seen devastating impact of the science. So, tonight, I want to update you on the latest news pertaining to fight disease and what you can do to help.
Now, I deliberately put a lot of effects
Yes.
on the voice clip that I used, but if you can't tell, that was Boris Johnson's most recent coronavirus update.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I just pitched it down and then put that in there, but I was like, you know, I think I went a different route to you, James, because you were obviously playing yours on a keyboard, whereas I just quickly made a pattern and made it repeat, so I was like, I can get a minute and a half out of this. Same fucking melody. Put a bit of Bojo in there.
Very good.
Mate,
I've got to be honest, I think there's a clear winner here.
Yeah, I mean,
It's up to
they're
Nick, isn't
both
it?
they're both really good, and I like that you've both got the feel of, like, you know, you had to get a bit of that talking in Harrison's one, and obviously the intro sounds are similar with the kind of ominous doom. But I got to say,
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, we both started with the strings. I
Very
really like
good.
that. It's just like, oh, Dungeon Synth. Strings.
put your final countdown in it though. I mean, that was my favourite song
That's
growing
got,
up.
that's, yeah, I agree, man. That was fucking great. Oh,
Well
man.
done, guys. Though, well done.
Well, that was Song Fight. Let's do some electro letters. Your correspondence, shall we?
Please.
Alright, so yeah, we got one email today that comes in from Pete Malloy Jones. We're just reading one from the inbox here. It's a long one, so strap in, put on some Mortis.
Putting some strap on.
Shrek Synth. He says, "Hi guys, great episode on the one GM book to own, and fully endorse those mentioned, especially ICRPG, but two others I always refer back to, even though not using their systems, are Numenera for advice on crafting stories, how to use GM intrusions, not to punish players, but to move the story on when the rules don't cover something, giving players narrative control with prompting by the GM, watching pacing, how to add description to the game, how to prep for a session, how to handle players, all good advice. I believe Cypher System uses a similar GM section." That's
Yeah.
right, isn't it, Nick?
Yeah, mate, it's good. And do you know what? When we was doing that episode, I did want to mention Cypher, but I just felt like I haven't given it enough hands-on time to be able to herald it as a must-have. But it's nearly there. I mean, our online playing of it, we all really enjoyed it, and I think it's going to be even more fun when we can do it around the table. So I would agree with Pete on
Agreed.
that one, definitely.
Yeah, I just think we need a bit more time with it to cement
Yes,
it.
we
But
do.
I'm
Exactly.
fairly certain from the play that we've had with it that it is, yeah, definitely is one well worth owning, because what I liked about it was that it felt collaborative without having too many stupid mechanics to it being
Yes,
collaborative. Do you know what I mean?
absolutely.
Yeah, Pete Malloy, he mentions that his second book that he wants to recommend is Dungeon World. And he says, again, emphasis on describing what the players see and hear, having agenda and principles in a game and writing them down to remind you. They fit all games. Agenda. Portray a fantastic world, fill the characters' lives with adventure, play to find out what happens. And the principles of it are draw maps, leave blanks, address the characters, not the players, embrace the fantastic, give every monster life, name every person, ask questions and use the answers, be a fan of the characters, think dangerous, begin and end with the fiction, think off-screen too. And he says you can add or remove agendas and principles to fit your game, tone and theme. Did I mention Dungeon World has a free online SRD? And that comes from Pete Jones. Yeah, that sounds great. Those types of... I always love when you have those types of principles, because, to be perfectly honest, like, Dungeon World doesn't appeal to me that much as, like, the other, like, Powered by the Apocalypse games, because... To me, when I'm playing fantasy stuff, I like it to be somewhat focused on slashing and killing monsters. I know that's just like an unpopular opinion nowadays, but that's just me. And then the characters kind of have their separate downtime, and Dungeon World is like about the journey, about, you know, the characters' relationships, and that's great, but it's probably more something that I would like to play maybe Monster of the Week in or something like that, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean,
SCP.
the whole thing of like also being a fan of the characters, I just think is probably one of the best bits of advice you could probably have, you know, because it's like it's so important. The second you start going on about your own story, you know, it's like at that point you're just why have the characters be there? Just write a book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly it.
Sounds good. And I really, really appreciate the recommendation. And also another thing, you know, that was on there was the him talking about make a map, leave blanks.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
That's a really good idea.
Think off screen too. That's a good one.
Yeah, I like both of those a lot, because it's kind of like that's also the DCC way of doing things. Like, to me, playing a good DCC game is almost having the whole map blank, except for the bit the players know, you know. Because they say, you know, you play people that have never been more than 20 miles away from their hometown, and I even did it in the, you know, the Cyber Sprawl Classics campaign. All we really had was the building that you guys worked in, and it got fleshed out as you learn of more locations, and it saves so much time, and also makes it so much easier.
It's like Fog of War in computer games, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's like Fog of RPG. Don't even know why I bothered saying that out of my mouth, but yeah. Yeah, and what happens off screen is really fucking important. It's like the simplest way to make a world feel living is for you to get back and things have changed. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, good recommendation, good advice, and that is the one electro letter we got in this time.
Cheers, Malloy.
I think
Cheers, Malloy.
What we might do from now on is kind of have the electro letters as a thing that we only do if we've got emails in the bag. So if you want to send in some communication and get us to read your question and answer it, then just send it to 3grpgpod@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Let's do an outro, shall we?
Do it.
But I think a lot of people like to use the pan flute setting. Pan flutes, a lot of people like pan flutes. I think it's because it's like medieval, like flute medieval, like that's like dark. Like look, you see, that's some really dark music.
Yeah, we're here in the outro. How do you like it? How do you like the new? Do you like what I've done with the place? Do you like the cobwebs? I like what we've done with the place.
Nice. Yeah, it's nice, dark. I like the curtains.
Very
beef
dark.
curtains.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
Good ambience. Anyway, if you want to contact us, 3T. Good. 3trpgpod@gmail.com. Also like us on Facebook. That's where we do most of our communications. And also don't forget to check out the acts we mentioned today in the Dungeon Synth community dungeon. Hail.
yeah.
Hail, greeting, hail, grating.
And thank you for listening. And I have been Forgotten Moon.
And I have been Satanic Countess.
And I have been...
I like the pause where you guys are trying to scroll up to get back to the intro here.
And I have been Bestial Ritual.
Nice. I remember that D20s are cool, but Dungeon Synth really is not. But I still like it. Goodbye, everyone. Bye.